Surviving America's Autocratic Oligarchy, Part 7. Welcome to Law and Society. Please subscribe and let's talk about this. Firstly, this may be the last episode of this podcast that I'm doing, Surviving America's Autocratic Oligarchy, because I want to come up with new titles for the mess that's coming. But today I wanted to talk to you about how incredibly wrong and morally repugnant it is for Donald Trump's administration to make drastic cuts to the Veterans Affairs Department, with cutting about 35% of the workforce. Now, the Veteran Services provide health care and support services to our veterans. Our veterans are people who have served in the military and who have many of whom have fought battles on behalf of the United States of America. Many of them are disabled. Many of them have psychological issues. Many of them have cognitive issues. Many of them need rehabilitation, and they get that from Veteran Services. And so the idea that Donald Trump will just drastically cut 35% of the workforce of a department that oversees the well-being of people who volunteered to serve and guard our freedom, all of our freedoms, and our Constitution, many of whom have given their lives, many of whom have given limbs, many of whom have scars that cannot be seen. And we are going to abandon them. We're going to make their services less available. That agency was already short-staffed. Veteran Services have already historically have been short-staffed, and you don't get things in a timely manner, and now it's going to be even more so. And so I speak to the American people and I ask you, please call your representatives, call your senators, and make sure that the Veterans Affairs Department remains fully funded and that their staff is fully there to be able to execute the services and provide for our veterans. Because it is the noblest of people who will go voluntarily to defend what we all take for granted, the freedom and the power and the pride that comes with being American. And we are going to betray those people? That is just wrong. Next, I want to talk to you about the education from the context of health. So, if school districts talk about vaccinations, that's now a problem. Measles is spreading throughout Texas and New Mexico, and now there have been confirmed 2 deaths from this disease that was eliminated supposedly years ago. But now it's back. Now it's back because of the vaccine, the anti-vaccine movement. And because we have an anti-vaxxer as a Secretary of Health and Human Services who is talking about the viability of cod liver oil and vitamin A to be able to combat measles when the vaccine that is available is effective and had eradicated measles in the population effectively over a decade ago. I think even more than a decade ago. But it is back. You talk about education in the context of being able to provide basic food to certain disadvantaged people in school whose families can't afford to feed their children 3 square meals a day. That impacts the children. That impacts their education and their development. You nix. You gut the National Institute of Health. You start cutting funding from research from colleges. Columbia is losing like millions of dollars. But these will all be litigated because all of these, this money that comes to the Department of Education and then is dispersed to the various other departments and states, that is congressionally legislated. And we have seen in the ruling recently that the Supreme Court will allow funds to be released if they are congressionally authorized. And these funds are congressionally authorized in the education and the research and in being able to have a competitive advantage in the world when it comes to science and technology. We're just being pushed back. We're being held back. We're being cut back by Donald Trump's policies and Donald Trump's and his doji, Elon Musk's sort of hatchet job policies, chainsaw politics, or chainsaw anti-bureaucracy by a bureaucrat who is not elected, who has defense contracts and conflicts of interest with our government, who has freely admitted, I'm talking about Elon Musk here, who's freely admitted that a lot of his troubles have gone away because Donald Trump has won, and since he has Donald Trump in his pocket. But we are getting pushback from Canada, from Mexico, from Europe, where Germany has passed a multi-billion-dollar bill to build their weapons and defense infrastructure, where France has offered Europe its nuclear umbrella that it independently developed to be able to shield NATO and become NATO's nuclear guarantor. Because there is talk now that even though Donald Trump can't withdraw us from NATO, he is effectively going to grind enforcement of compliance with NATO to a halt. And I hope that somebody sues. I hope NATO sues, because any beneficiary of NATO is harmed by that, and because NATO is party to the treaty, which is law of the land, so that Donald Trump fulfills American obligations to NATO. But we're not seeing a pushback from Congress, though. Congress has relegated its spending power, its lawmaking power, its advice and consent power, all to Donald Trump. Has, confirmed his most extreme nominees, wants to get the most extreme cuts where Mike Johnson says he will codify the recommendations that Doji is making, while the whole society of federal workers are in flux. Researchers in medical and educational institutions are frozen with their work. And as of right now, Donald Trump hasn't complied with Judge Ali's order of releasing the $2 billion in frozen aid, that is U.S. aid for international development. You have until Monday. And so we're seeing that Congress is not taking its responsibility or pushing back. But congressional Democrats are writing amicus briefs. There's going to come a time that congressional Democrats may have to go to court as a caucus to be able to assert Congress's powers and take them back from an overreaching executive. That is not something that Donald Trump has immunity from. That is not part of the immunity deal. Immunity of the executive doesn't extend to overreaching into the first article government branch, which is Congress. Now, there's talk now that Donald Trump is going to give more pardons. I will talk to you more about it when the time comes. What I find to be something that has been normalized so quickly, these days we sane wash absurdity and tyranny so quickly that Donald Trump can so easily at a joint session of Congress say that there will be disturbances in society. Disturbances in society. From a person who promised and campaigned on lowering our cost of living. To be able to have no tax on tips. To be able to get Social Security. To be able to get Medicaid and Medicare. And now not only are those services under threat, there has not been even a little bit lowering in the cost of living. It has just gone up and up and up. Inflation is up. Things are going to cost more. Cars are going to cost more. And they're talking about, temporary disturbances until we get our country going. Well, what is temporary and just minor disturbances for billionaires happens to be major disturbances for people who live paycheck to paycheck, who depend on Social Security and Medicare checks and Medicaid benefits, people who rely on these services because they cannot make ends meet, because we cannot raise the federal minimum wage to a living wage. And it has been over a decade, I think more than that the federal minimum wage has not changed. It needs to be drastically changed. It needs to be doubled from what it is right now. I think it's like $7.50 or something. So, we are in a place where Donald Trump is minimizing the pain that Americans are going to feel on a day-to-day basis, and going to take that money and take those resources and spend that to be able to give the ultra-rich tax cuts, the 0.01% of Americans who don't pay their fair share of tax cuts, who don't pay their fair share of taxes are going to get even more tax cuts. If that sounds absurd, that's because it is. We have a wannabe king, so ignoble that we have never seen one like this in history. Rules don't apply. There are no plans. Impulsive, unjust, undeserving of the office where he sits. And we are now left in a place where we are trying to find who the next person is going to be, who is going to take on this entirely unwise, entirely inept, entirely undeserving person who now occupies the White House. Well, I can tell you this. Democrats, you can go to rallies and you can make symbolic visits to Selma on the day of the riots. But what actually will get people to listen to you is for you to go back to the people and talk to them. To have the town halls. To work to make the improvements that your constituents need. Richie Torres is a great example of somebody who uses the internet and social media in a positive way by showing what he's doing for his constituents. There are many other representatives who do that. And Republican representatives do that and have done that with legislation which they voted no against that were passed by Biden. But when the money came, they took credit for that, and that was going to their constituents. It shouldn't just be limited to that work of the constituency. Spend more time with your people. And if you are not the incumbent, if you are in a red district, and if you're running for office, don't just run for office. Think of community service. Clean a park. Clean a community. Bring playgrounds to areas that don't have a lot of money. Help with programs that are federal, like AmeriCorps and Teach for America. There are many ways for you to go out and use your leadership skills more than protesting by serving your fellow Americans. And that's where true leadership comes from. That's where somebody understands the relationship between the agricultural element of our economy and the technological importance of our economy. Not just sending up space flights that burst in the air and blow up billions of dollars of taxpayer money, but also pay attention to food production workers and maybe provide them with protection so they are allowed to stay in the United States and keep doing the work that Americans will not do. Go to your communities, help them in any way that you can. Listen to their concerns and then report back to the nation. Don't just go there on the day of the protest, not just for symbol. Go to every community that is in need. You guys get enough holidays and you get paid quite a bit of money. So please do your jobs if you are incumbents and be active in that arena. And if you are in red districts and you're not an incumbent, and if you're in deep red districts, start by doing a community service project. Start by building something that will help the community. Start by organizing a group that will help clean up parks, that will keep communities safe by establishing neighborhood watches, by designating areas where you can have surveillance cameras when you pool in money together, or when you have fundraising drives by selling candy, or whether that be car wash or whatever else services that you can provide. These small community services actually enliven communities. It shows people doing things that to be able to fuel the community on their own. And then it builds into movements. So I encourage that type of leadership. Not just of those who are in power, but those who are seeking power, or those who just want to make positive change in the world. You may not know this, but you are a leader because you want to make positive change in the world. Make that change locally. Think about it globally. Make it locally. Make it happen, whether that be planting a tree in every community, or cleaning up, like I said, a park or a government building, or painting the houses of poor people who can't afford it, or providing food kitchens. Find ways to build leadership in your community. And that's how we can beat back this fake populist, imperialist, ignoble wannabe king, Donald Trump, and those who comply with him, those who capitulate to his lies and to his demands. With that said, thank you very much for listening. Please like and subscribe, and share, and I'll talk to you soon.